Welcome to the Monday, November 22nd meeting of the Green Bay Plan Commission. First item on the agenda is roll call. Tim Gilbert, Chair, is present. Sydney Bremer, Vice Chair.
Present.
Alder Veronica Parker-Stacks.
Present.
Commissioner Lisa Hanson.
Present.
Commissioner Jacob Miller.
Present.
Commissioner Randall Petrowski.
Present.
And Commissioner Jerry Wisniewski.
Present.
Thank you. Next item, approval of the agenda for the November 26th meeting.
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. Next item, approval of the minutes from the October 22nd, 2018 meeting at the Green Bay Plan Commission.
Motion approved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. Next item, regular business. Item 1, consideration with possible action on the request to approve a drainage easement discontinuance at 1208 Wolverine Court, submitted by Louis Ulmer.
Thank you. For this easement discontinuance, we are looking just on this one parcel. So on the original plat, the easement is shown throughout this entire drainage right here. There's a proposed new build on this for another single-family home. There's currently a 30-foot easement on this portion of it. After discussions with the property owner and then also with our Department of Public Works, we have decided it's only necessary to keep the 20-foot portion versus the full 30-foot. I believe that in your documentation, it had requested that the petitioner was looking for an 18-foot easement. DPW came back and said that 20 feet was agreeable, so I believe that the applicant is okay with that measure as well. To give some context for this, the easement runs all the way through here, and this is a stormwater retention area that the city owns. And this is the proposed area that the new home will be on. So this is where that easement area is that they needed to do the encroachment on. So by minimizing it down to 20 feet, they should be able to get the site plan that they have with maybe some minor modifications onto this parcel. So we are recommending approval of this request with this condition that they keep that they are limited to discontinuing only the 10 feet on the eastern portion, keeping the western portion.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion among staff? Thank you. Is there anybody that would wish to speak on this matter? Okay, thank you.
Motion approved.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Wisniewski, a second by Alder Veronica Parker-Stacks to approve this recommendation. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I would ask that you submit your vote.
Sorry, having technical difficulties here.
You wanna? Okay, then we vote.
We
Just
good?
waiting for Randy and Jake.
I haven't gotten an option to vote yet.
Okay. How do you guys vote?
In favor.
Same.
Okay, unanimously approved.
Okay, thank you. Next item, item 2, consideration with possible action on the request to vacate an unimproved portion of right-of-way north of Deckner Avenue submitted by Green Bay Area Public School District.
Thank you. So this was kind of a no-brainer. This is an unapproved portion of right-of-way that was platted years and years and years ago. It was never really intended to do anything unless there were further improvements done in this area here, which are not proposed by the city or any private entities at this point. So this is Sullivan Elementary School. They're looking to do a parking expansion in this area, and in order to do that, they need to vacate this portion of right-of-way so they can do the build over that area. We had contacted all of our utility and service providers, and there were no comments or conditions aside from this from WPS, they do have some lighting facilities there, and they don't necessarily need an easement area over that, but they do need access to those facilities. So I put them in contact with the applicant, and I believe that they are working something out, and if they can't work something out, then WPS will just remove those poles. So I think during their site plan process, they will figure out this condition, but that's the only condition that we have as part of this application.
Thank you.
And just to be sure, what you're saying is the condition is not a binding condition.
It is binding that they have to do something with that. They either have to get into an agreement with the school district and WPS, or the WPS will remove those. So it's our duty as a city to let the applicant know what type of utilities are in the area, and that they have to adhere to this condition, so that they either have to have some sort of an agreement or an easement, that's between the two of them, or WPS will remove those facilities. So we have the obligation to tell them that there are things there, but because they're not our facilities, we can't dictate how they take care of that issue. So both parties know, they know that it has to be resolved.
Good enough.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Is there anybody present that would like to speak on this item?
I'm from the school district. I'm just here as a resource if you had any questions.
Thank you.
But it is our intent to work with WPS to maintain access to those lights.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion?
I would move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Petrowski, a second by Commissioner Hanson to approve the request. Any further discussion? Hearing none. I would ask that you cast your vote.
I must have frozen, there we go, I must have frozen my stuff.
Unanimously approved.
Okay, it has been approved unanimously. Thank you. Next item, item 3, consideration with possible action on the request for a subdivision variance at 1717 Morrow Street for a lot created smaller than the allowed square footage, submitted by Bob Harris.
Thank you. As with all variance requests, we do put the modification standards within the staff report for you, so you guys have those in front of you. We do look at this for strict compliance with that. If they can prove that there is a hardship, then we typically go in favor of the application. So for the one that's in front of us, this is for this parcel here, which is kind of hard to see. It's got this kind of odd shape here. How it functions on the ground now is that there was a tenant in this building. I believe that they want to parcel it off to have a new tenant go in or to have that tenant gain ownership. The rest of this parcel is typically used by the parcel business that's on this one. So what we're looking for with the variance request is if strict compliance would negate their ability to do business or to promote their benefit within the city. So with this, they would technically still be able to get 20,000 square feet as is required by our zoning code, but with that, they would only just be making it a lot larger and less compliant. Typically, we want those squared off parcels, so that way it's just a lot easier for boundaries and understanding how properties function. So if they do the clean line here that they're proposing, they get that 14,000-ish square feet, which is how the site functions right now. Right now, this back half is still used mostly operationally by the parcel here. So to split these here and then combine these in the future makes the most sense because that's how the on-the-ground operations work now and it's how the site functions now. They could have expanded this to make it the 20,000 square feet, but then they would have just had to do cross easements with the people who are actually going to be using the site. So it doesn't really seem to benefit anybody to make them follow that strict compliance of the code. Excuse me. So with that, we don't really see any other issues. There are some features on the site that cause them to need this type of a request. So with that, we are recommending the approval. The only thing that we would require is that when the CSM comes in, because it has not been submitted yet, that it does follow these strict standards for the dimensions that they propose as part of this variance request. So if there were any adjustments that they wanted to take, they would have to come back through and have their variance amended. So with that, that's the only condition that we have as part of the approval here.
Thank you. Is there any discussion amongst staff? Chair would entertain a motion.
To approve as seen. Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Bremer and a second by Commissioner Hanson to approve the request. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I would ask that you cast your vote.
Unanimously approved.
Okay, they have been approved unanimously. Thank you. Next item, item 4, consideration with possible action on the request for a subdivision variance on Burns Avenue, parcel 6-153-E-1, for 3 lots to be created smaller than the allowed street frontage, submitted by Jacma Homes LLC.
Thank you. So for this variance request, we're looking at this parcel right here. They have on the proposal, I think was part of their site plan, they have these other 2 parcels that they must also have under their control, but this is the one that we're looking at here. This right here is Mason Street, and then Taylor's right here, so this is on the west side of town. What they are proposing is to take the currently vacant lot and divide it into 3 separate lots for single-family development. So for the standards, it would have to be 75 feet in width and I think 7,500 square feet for our R1 standards. It meets the area standard, but does not meet the frontage standard. So they're proposing lots that are 69 feet frontage. While this is a small modification, it's only 6 feet, we also are still looking at that hardship criteria. So to me, this doesn't meet any hardship criteria because it's vacant land, surrounded by other vacant land in an already established neighborhood. So with that, we try to get a feel for what has already been permitted within the neighborhood, either through plating or different variances. So we looked at the average frontages in a 300-foot radius in this neighborhood, not including corner lots or anything that's on a cul-de-sac, because those get counted differently. And with that, the average was 58.89 feet. So over the standard that's already allowed, we have the 75 foot that we require, but the average here is 78.89 feet. The majority of them that are around them are 80 feet, so most of the ones that are across the street are all 80-foot lots, which was done during the original platting. So while this is a minor request of only 6 feet per lot, I don't see a hardship being met here, so with that, we are requesting denial.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm trying to get a clearer sense of what this would mean. Apparently, that whole area was once a major estate, I take it, because there is a large house to the back.
I would gather because or else it would have been platted out with the rest of the neighborhood at the time.
Right, and there's a driveway going into that from Pine Street, going into that large area. There are a mixture of mostly cedar, very old, huge evergreens all the way around the perimeter of what I assume to have been the original estate.
This one here.
Yeah. So that right now that those run across the front on Burns. I'm just trying to get a picture of what that means, dividing up that lot, what it means.
They would, I would imagine, clear most of it, especially the fronting trees. Anything back here, I imagine that would be backyard, so I think it would be up to whoever purchases the property, but to do the division, you'd end up with 3 lots, 3 separate homes, and then I'm assuming anything that's here would be taken down just to get access and then visual for the single.
The oddity is that that's the front lot vis-a-vis the front entrance of the house that's set way back up to the top. It's just a very peculiar situation where they clearly had established it as a single unit outlined by all those evergreens, but then set the house way back.
Typically, we see this on the far east side of town where people had the big parcels of land, build a big house, 20 years down the road, they realize that they want to sell it off. So then it is really rare to see this in this kind of a neighborhood, but that is exactly what happened. They had the large estate, planted it accordingly, now we're selling those parcels off. So all of this, I'm assuming, was just theirs at one point, and now the sale of that would negate that.
So is it just for, I guess, continuity? I guess I look at this and my old house was 50 by 100 and my current house is 48 by 126. So like 48 feet, it's much smaller than 6. I wouldn't kill for another 20 feet. But I guess I don't see an issue with it having, I realize it's under that 75, but is it just for continuity in the neighborhood that the issue is?
Typically, we're looking for frontage as far as making sure that it matches what the neighborhood already has established. So we also have some caveats for like in the downtown neighborhoods, when you have infill lots, those can be down to 50 feet in frontage because the surrounding neighbors are usually right around 50 to 55 feet, if that usually. So when you're looking at the other areas, you want to do that 300-foot area to see what the other neighbors have as corresponding to make sure that they're all kind of similar. Because obviously the size of the lot can then influence how big the house is or how small the house is too. So you don't want it to be much different than what's already there. But also with our standards, the closer you get to downtown, there are some OR districts there, and that has a smaller lot size obviously versus R1. This is the same here, so it's going to be far east side, far west side. So take that with a grain of salt.
So are they planning to do single-family houses, 3 single-family?
As far as I know, I think that they have that in their description here, that they're all single family, 3-bedroom, 2 baths. Bless you.
That does get at
Bless you.
the major difficulty I have here, and that is that the 69-foot lots would fit the neighborhood fairly well. They're directly across from a 70-foot lot, and the ones on either side are 80 apiece in the width. And just a little bit further down the street, there's some that are narrower. And I do understand your argument that this is not a hardship. And I accept that argument. It's just that the result seems to me to be a little bit odd.
I agree with you, but it is my job as the fiscal planner to go with strict compliance with the code. That is my recommendation.
Okay, so we could determine not to strictly enforce the code.
Yes. Commissioner.
I think that Jerry was first, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't see any place on here I could press speak. Yeah, I noticed across the street it was 72 feet, now 68 feet across the street, 3 of them. The homes would definitely be that much smaller. I do concur the fact that you have to go by what really is handed down as far as enforcing the code, and this would violate the code. The only question I have these people been informed of the fact that they go to the Board of Appeals to appeal this, or is that not true?
This is that entity. This is the only body that can allow for this.
Oh, it is?
Yep, anything with the subdivision code goes through this body versus anything that be setback related, that
Gotcha.
goes to Board of Appeals. So this is their way to do this.
However, they could reappeal if they just put in 2 houses there.
If they put in 2 houses, they don't need any
Not a
approval.
problem.
Pardon me?
If they do 2 houses, they don't need any approval. They could just
Yeah.
divide the land and go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's just because they're doing the 3, which makes them smaller than the frontage that's allowed. So that's why it's coming
Okay.
here. Or else we would just do a CSM and it would be over with.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Could you go back to the lot lines that are encompass more of the neighborhood? That's the one. The 300-foot perimeter that you're looking at here, is that also by code, or is that just a number that was kind of decided on?
That's the number that we use when we have the densely populated areas where we're looking to see if it can go down to the 50 feet. So it's usually just in our already platted areas that have more lots than this. So that's just what we use as a standard for evaluating the variance requests.
It seems to me that if you go just beyond that, we're looking at a lot of, I see 62, 70, 65, 65, 55.
It appears that in this general direction, it goes a lot of 80, and then in between, it goes between 65 and 70.
Right, I'm looking across the street at Burns.
Mm-hmm.
Like 1776 is 65, 1773 is 65. Then we have a 55, unless my eyesight is fading. on
This
me.
is also a little deceiving too, because like this one is attached to this one, so this is 69 feet plus 14 feet.
Right, and
This
then-
one's 55, this one's 65, yeah.
Then we have 65, a 70, and these are proposed to be 69 each, is that correct?
Just from a department standpoint, we don't look at financial gain as a hardship, so that's where
Sure.
my recommendations come from. But I also recommend denial on like 90% of these applications, so.
Okay.
I'd like to move to approve.
Well, do we have
Second.
anybody that would like to speak on this? Okay. Motion?
Motion.
Second?
Move to approve. Yep.
And a second?
Second?
With a motion and a second to approve the request or to approve the denial?
Approve the request.
To approve the request.
I'm okay with 3 lots.
Oh,
Oh,
And that's your second?
no.
Oh.
Okay.
I do not approve, I concur with the staff.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the request,
I'd second that motion,
and we have a second. Okay,
just to get to
so
discussion.
now we can have a discussion. Is there any discussion on this?
I'm inclined to vote in favor of the request. I know that I certainly respect the recommendation, and I understand that you guys are bound to the strict compliance of the code. However, if we do look just a little bit farther out on that same street, we have a lot of lots that fall under the number that's being proposed by the landowner here. And frankly, maybe this is more of a short-term vision than a long-term vision, but I know that there's a need for additional housing. And I know that new housing that's located within the city limits, new builds within the city limits of Green Bay are particularly of a challenge. And from a single-family perspective, to have the ability to have 3 available, maybe that's a short-sighted conclusion, but I think it's a particularly pressing one. And given the fact that there are substantially similar lot lines in the relatively close proximity, I'm inclined to be in favor of granting the variance here.
Thank you.
Commissioner Petrowski, I don't think it's quite short-sighted. We're planning economic development up here. Just take my planning hat off, which I think, right, go through and then apply the code, put the ED hat on. We only have so many acres in the city to develop, so if we can get 3 houses out of 2, and the deviation, you know, again, it's not extremely significant. I would agree in terms of, you know, looking at the limited opportunities that we have, we can maximize that from the ED perspective, which is what we're not, but just laying that out there, I don't think it's short-sighted at all.
So it's not the end of the world either way.
I would not consider it that way.
Yes.
I would like to make it clear that I consider us very well advised by staff.
Yes.
Thank you.
I second that.
I have to support
I thought
that
that-
motion.
But yeah, knowing the vacancy rate in the city and having a new build within the city limits, it's a big deal.
In an established neighborhood.
Right.
So, yes.
So the
Yes
yes
would
is
split
to
into 3.
approve the,
Yes,
yeah,
split
the
into
3.
To approve the 3 lots.
Do you need a warm finger?
Are we voting
Oh,
on
I
the
can see.
recommendation, excuse me, or are we
Look at
voting
that.
on what's?
I got hot little hands.
We are voting on Lisa's, I think it was Lisa's motion to approve the applicant's request.
Okay,
Yes.
go against staff.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, motion was approved 6-1.
It was approved 6-1.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Next item, director's report.
Thank you. A little bit off on the schedule with budget and everything, so we haven't met as much. The last council meeting was Monday, November 5th. At that meeting, it's a public hearing for zoning ordinance 1618, which is rezoning 2405 West Mason Street from business park to general commercial. The applicant actually asked for that meeting to be held until January, so it is on hold right now, so that did not go through. It's being held for the moment. They did approve, there was a hearing and approval for planning ordinance 4-18, which was closing the unapproved portion of Kellogg Street. And then as far as the plan commission report that went that evening, it was the 4 bid plans, and those were all approved at that time.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, the date of the next meeting, tentatively anyway, is Monday, December 10th, 2018. And the next item is adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Brenner and a second by Commissioner Hanson to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.